Live everywhere on netrootsradio.com. David Waldman, Kagro, in the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How are you doing? It is Tuesday, July 27th, 2021. Time for yet another show. The household is bustling today. There'll likely be some noise in the background as people get ready for their daily routines. And one of my sons off on a camping trip this morning, so I don't know what kind of noise that generates. I guess the rustling of backpacks and probably the discussion of the rustling of backpacks in the background and all that. So please ignore all of that, I guess, unless we could focus on that as the news of the day. I don't know how many people would be interested in it, but maybe you'd like to go camping too. You know, the rest of us, I think at this age, working hard each day in order to have an indoors to stay in instead of going out there. But the carefree days of youth, okay, still available at least to them. Plenty to round up today. And let's see, everybody seems to be catching on, for instance, this morning to the looming Sturgis Biker Festival. We're still... I don't know. What does this make us? About 10 days, I guess, to Sturgis. But everybody who's making their way there long distance might already be out on the road, possibly spreading their COVID, possibly picking up COVID from others. We don't know precisely what they're doing and where they're doing it, but we know where they'll end up doing it in 10 days from now in the Dakotas. And I guess... word is that they're expecting possibly record-breaking crowds. What great timing. Record-breaking crowds at Sturgis this year, as it is the 75th annual gathering. It's listed as the 75th anniversary, but I mean, now is the first anniversary of last Sturgis, so I get what they mean. But they mean the 75th year of their gathering. And it says here in Kelo Land News, is that like KELO television or something like that? Sturgis city officials are preparing for big numbers for next month's rally. I hope they're preparing for big numbers in coronavirus as well, but most of the people will... I guess they're lucky in the sense that they'll take it with them and go overwhelm the hospitals in their hometowns. They do, of course, leave it behind for those working in the service industry, serving the folks on their way in and out, and they all, I guess, get to go to the hospital locally. But at any rate, Sturgis officials are preparing for big numbers in next month's rally. In fact, as they say, they expect attendance could reach record-setting numbers. It says the record-setting numbers. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. During the 75th anniversary, the story, they say, coming up on their local news channel. By the way, what are record-breaking numbers for something like this? I think they might actually approach 500,000 people coming through. I don't know if they're all there at once, or, some people come for the first 3 days and some people for the last 3 days, or I don't know what. But at any rate, I got to looking at that the other day as I was sharing thoughts about Sturgis approaching, and had somebody send along the observation like, hell, we don't need to wait for Sturgis in 10 days. This is what was happening in Atlanta just last night. And it was a picture of what I guess purported to be the previous night's Major League Soccer game in Atlanta, being held presumably in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. It looked to be a packed house. I'm sure down in Georgia there are no restrictions in terms of the attendance. The record attendance at a Major League Soccer game in Atlanta, held a couple of years ago, say 2018 or so, appears to be about 73,000 people, which is a huge crowd, no doubt. Not one you really want to be in the middle of a still flourishing pandemic, really. And but still, 73,000 people gathered in one stadium for a couple of hours for a game. Well, that's a big deal, and particularly these days with the faster transmission of the Delta variant. What is that compared to 500,000 people gathering for a week in more or less the same place? Well, we'll see which ones are the biggest super spreaders. And there's plenty of blame to go around. Lots of things open and happening that probably shouldn't, including, I guess, the Olympic Games, where who knows what's happening at this point. But I do see this morning that lots of Twitter chatter, but not enough for me to click on and find out what's actually happening. But lots going on because Simone Biles apparently has left the arena during the team competition. I don't know whether she's suffered any kind of an injury or whatever, but it appears to be that the idea is to save her for the individual competition later on, which is interesting in its own right. It used to be sometimes you had people, I guess, save themselves for the team competition, but Biles, I guess, pretty much far and away the most favored for the gold in the individual, I think, and so, that's a pretty big and remarkable achievement, and you don't want to waste your training on who knows what. And of course, I guess in the team competition, I don't know whether the United States was necessarily favored to win that anyway. They're competing against the Russians, who are not even supposed to be there because of doping scandals. But the International Olympic Committee being what it is, and international, I guess, television viewership and sponsorship being what it is, and I guess possibly also the possibility that Russian mobsters would murder members of the International Olympic Committee if they didn't come down with a decision allowing Russian athletes to compete under, what is it, ROC? Is that the Russian Olympic Committee? I don't know. It's one of those legal fictions that they put together for the purposes of, I guess, allowing, athletes to compete, and that's supposed to be what the Olympics are about. But I guess if you get banned as a country for doping, the whole idea is that you will refuse to participate as an athlete if you know that it could cost you and all of your Olympic teammates their opportunity to compete. But on the other hand, if it will never cost you anything, then what the hell? Why not go ahead? And if you get caught, you get caught. I don't know. Who am I to dictate how the Olympics run? It makes no sense to me. All right. I watched a little bit of the competition last night. It was very interesting to see. I didn't see any of the sports I usually watch, but that was because the remote control was across the room and I had my laptop on my lap, and you know how that goes. You can't be getting up to change the channel or anything. So I watched some fencing. I saw the women's épée team fencing event, United States versus South Korea, and pretty much reaffirmed my original suspicions about watching fencing. It's very cool. Turn the sound off, basically, is a great idea. I can't take it. The yelling is unbelievable. I actually had to look it up. Apparently, this is a thing that among fencers, and I guess people who watch fencing know, and I guess are used to it, but fencers they're a very weird and high-strung bunch anyway, and it's a little bit like a chess tournament with swords, if you ask me. And they scream, they scream bloody murder at the top of their lungs pretty much after every point. And I thought this might be an exercise in tension release, and it turns out to actually be the case. At least that's the claim. I guess you're focused so intently, and I guess you'd be pretty much focused intently on anything you'd be doing in the Olympics, right? But they're focused so intently, and I guess, I don't know, I wonder if they're allowed to scream during the actual, fencing that's going on, as opposed to afterwards. So anyway, once the point is over, they scream for this tension release, and there's also this intimidation factor kind of thing going on, and it's to the point where everybody's doing it, and you can hear even as two fencers are still competing in their bout, you can hear people doing that screaming across the room and other parts of the venue when their point ends. So I don't know why they don't just let them scream all the time at that point. But, all right, I don't know. I guess they have their weird etiquette and they only scream at certain moments, but it's really disturbing. And it's just annoying to watch and listen to these high-strung people scream like that. If you thought it was weird and disturbing that we got used to the loud screams and grunts and groans during tennis, I don't know. This one seems pretty weird to me too. But what do I know? I don't do any sword fighting for a living or whatever. So I just found that interesting. Also interested in, I guess I got to see a softball game, the Canadian team versus the Mexican team for the bronze medal, and they were commenting on the fact that all, I guess, 30 people on the roster that day were all actually American collegians. They all played their college softball in the United States. And that the Mexican team is largely made up of, American citizens who played their collegiate softball in America, but who claim some Mexican ancestry. And I guess the rules in softball are a little loose, and a little looser than they are in some other sports. And we found that interesting too. And I don't know. I think ultimately I came down and saying, well, it's a little bit strange, and I kind of wish every country had a huge roster of players of all sports to choose from, but they really don't. And ultimately, it gives more top athletes, I guess, a chance to compete, and makes the competition better, and presents the possibility, I guess, of Mexico further developing their own softball program if they are actually in competition for a medal. So maybe more kids will want to play softball. Just sort of interesting to watch. All right, let's see. Here's the news on Simone Biles, and we can just check in on that before heading into the real political stories of the day. Just wanted to figure out what's going on here. Olympic champion Simone Biles pulls out of women's team gymnastics final at Tokyo. Does it say why? After only competing in the vault. Let's see. So let me see if I can click on the story. And you probably heard it already, and because I guess this happened earlier in the day. And gymnastics is the kind of sport that some of you might have woken up early to see, or maybe, I don't know, stayed up overnight to watch, for all I know. Physically fine, but just as a medical issue, and I guess basically just protecting her ability to compete later on. So I've learned nothing, which, is pretty much the general state of things when I'm watching Olympic gymnastics anyway. I don't learn too much. I get amazed at things once in a while, but all right. So we'll jump back off of this and over into Pocket and see what we have put together for today. Let's see. More update on the Arizona audit. I think we mentioned that yesterday, right? But our story was paywall protected. Here is another source, KTAR News, reporting this. Shut out of Arizona audit, Ken Bennett, that's the liaison officer from the state Senate. Ken Bennett raises concerns about transparency. Okay, so here's the best we can get in terms of a full write-up on this. Arizona Senate liaison Ken Bennett, and I don't know whether he's the secretary of the Senate, or I think they refer to him in this story as Secretary Bennett at some point. But he's the liaison to the Cyber Ninjas fraudit that's going on at the fairgrounds. Well, the liaison, Bennett, said on Monday that he's being shut out of the Cyber Ninjas-led audit of the 2020 Maricopa County election, and he raised concerns about the contractors' lack of transparency, which, of course, I don't know whether it's by design or what, or it's just part of the Republican delaying tactics in general, or at least the Trumpist delaying tactics. The whole claim of, right to have the audit at all was in the name of transparency. We're only having this audit in the name of transparency. We're not going to do it transparently, but, that's the usual hypocrisy, I guess, and we're all supposed to be over that somehow for whatever reason. But I would expect more of this to go on because, they're not going to find what they need in the audit, certainly. And the longer it goes on, I guess the more fundraising and grifting they can do off of it. And the more, I guess, it keeps the hope alive for people who don't know what you should actually base hope on versus, when you should give up. Anyway, Bennett has been the audit's most prominent public face since it started on April 23rd. I was wondering about that. So we're 2 months in at this point. But his future as I guess 3 months in at this point, right? So his future as the Senate's representative is in doubt, with a final report expected in the next month. So a third of a year it's going to take him to count these votes and come up with nothing. I can only be a part of moving forward and vouching for the final product if there is transparency in seeing the procedures and things that are going to be used to build that final product, he told KTAR News. And they give the whole identifier here. KTAR News 92.3 FM's The Mike Broomhead Show. So there's plenty of extra promo for good old Mike Broomhead, whoever that is. I would change my name, quite honestly. The former Arizona Secretary of State, that's the reason for that, has been providing regular media updates as a spokesman for the Senate Republicans who hired cyber ninjas and other contractors as well to recount approximately 2.1 million ballots and inspect voting equipment from the November general election in Metro Phoenix. I'm just curious now about the mathematics of all this. They've been going for 2 months, or 3 months, so that's like 90 days basically, right? 90 days. I mean, I guess they're not really working 24 hours a day, but that's 2,160 hours, I guess, in the 90 days. And they got 2.1 million ballots, so that's going to work out pretty good because it's 2.1 thousand hours. So if they have 2.1 million ballots divided by 2,100 hours, they still have, it's still quite a bit. They have to deal with 1,000 ballots an hour. And I guess since they're trying to find out if they have bamboo fibers and photographing them and moving them from one table to another in color-coordinated T-shirts, and et cetera, I was wondering about that. And when will they start to approach a number that's like, come on, I could count these ballots faster than you guys before, they finally give up whatever their results are supposed to be. All right, so they are recounting all of those 2.1 million ballots and inspecting the voting equipment. Bennett said he was denied access on Friday. This is where we picked up the story yesterday, from an ongoing third count of the ballot totals in an Arizona State Fairgrounds building after a disagreement about how that tally should be conducted. I think the basic rule should be count up the number of ballots you have and then write that number down. But there was a dispute, apparently. He said he's got a co-liaison named Randy Pullen. And co-liaison Randy Pullen had already taken the lead during the new count, which Bennett thought an independent group should conduct. After the Cyber Ninjas tally, you ready for these things? The Cyber Ninjas tally didn't match the total documented by Maricopa County. So I'm sure the Cyber Ninjas say, aha, we've uncovered, shenanigans here. The question is, are the shenanigans the Cyber Ninjas shenanigans or someone else's? Pullen confirmed to KTAR News on Monday that Bennett no longer has access to the Wesley Bolin building at the fairgrounds where the last recount is happening, but he's still the audit liaison. The auditors have refused to reveal their procedures for the latest count, Bennett said, leaving him, quote, very concerned they would, quote, force balance in the direction of their earlier findings. That's interesting. So at some point, Cyber Ninjas, I guess, faces the choice of cooking the books in favor of what they meant to find or cooking the books in favor of what they found the first time so that it looks like they know what they're doing. Is the motivation to find alleged fraud stronger than the motivation to reconfirm their own numbers? And I suppose if there's a serious question about, well, how will you be counting? How will you reach the total number of ballots? Is it something like, is it as we would imagine it, count the ballots using, base 10 numbers and everything and then write the number down? Or is it some other procedure like count the number of ballots and if you know there's supposed to be more ballots, add more ballots? Because we would want to know about how you're proceeding at this point, but they won't tell them. The auditors have refused to reveal their procedures. And because of his concerns, he has consulted with another outside group that has been researching the election independently of the audit and had offered assistance. No, I think that will only make things worse. I want to caution you against that. Although, at this point, maybe I should just be rooting for as big a circus as possible, because I'll probably get my wish if I do that. Anyway, indirectly, Bennett goes on here, indirectly I allowed some information that was supposed to be private to get out. That's obviously a confession of some sort. He says he accidentally leaked something, but a leaker he is. And then, this is interesting because the reference shifts here. Who are we talking about? Indirectly, I allowed some information that was supposed to be private to get out, Bennett said. His next quote is, he leaked it to the press. Is that the co-liaison? Who? He leaked it to the press, and I felt bad about that. Obviously, Mr. Pullen, yes. And maybe the Senate and others were upset. No, maybe not then. And so that's why I was denied access. So even in this story, to clear things up, things are very unclear. Bennett said it's not the first time the cyber ninjas have withheld procedural information from him, but he hopes things can be worked out so he can continue as liaison until the end of the process, in 15 years or whatever. I just cannot function as a liaison with those kinds of hide the ball from me stuff, he said. But I'm working with Senate President Karen Fann, and who he refers to as President Fan. They insert the rest of that. So President Fan might have confused you. And if we can get those kinds of things worked out, I want to see this audit through to success. And success to me is the facts. I'm glad he defined that. Election integrity is not about whether or not Donald Trump won an election. Election integrity is about, did we get the election right? And that's what I'm focused on. I suppose that's the right comment to make. Although, given where we are in this situation, ultimately the right comment was, no, this whole thing is BS and I don't want to be involved in it. And no one should be. Joe Biden won the election and Donald Trump lost it. And that's the end. We counted it right the first time and the second time and the third time before we even started with these clowns. Bennett said he now expects the final report to be sent to the Senate in mid or late August, which would be nearly 5 months after Fan first announced that cyber ninjas had been hired for the job. In a March 31st press release, Fan said she expected the report to be issued in about 60 days. Wow. So they're 90 days in and figuring on taking another 60 before there's any report. Her selection of the Florida-based company's $150,000 bid, there's another piece of math we should be working on, drew scrutiny over founder Doug Logan's deleted Twitter account, which had activity supporting unfounded election conspiracy theories. So that's some kind of bid. Here, we said they have been going for about 2,100 hours, right? So far, $150,000 divided by the 150,000 divided by the 2,100 hours that things have lasted so far. That's not to say that they were working all of that time, but that was a bit of less than $71.50 an hour for the work. I guess really we should be looking at the per diem. So I don't know how many people they ended up hiring, but they looked like they had hired plenty of people and put them in those goofy color-coordinated T-shirts. Really, honestly, we might as well have had the Wiggles conducting this audit at this stage, but whatever. $150,000. Say they've gone 90 days already. That is $1,666, mark of the beast, plus $1,000 per day to conduct that audit. And they're going to go another 60 days, right, before they produce that. So that is about 150 days. What do you know? Easy math. $150,000, 150 days of work, $1,000 a day to get that job done. Do you think you could do it? Well, if you didn't really have to count or be held accountable for your work, I suppose you could. But who knows whether any of the Wiggles are going to get paid on this thing. All right. Questions have since arisen about the source of funds being raised in the name of covering audit costs. That's a good question because $150,000 isn't covering it. So really the question should be who's covering it in addition to how much they're paying to do it. But that costs are expected to run into the millions, it says here, which is a damn sight larger than the $150,000 contracted for. Maricopa County officials have denounced the proceedings, questioning the methods, competence, and motives of the auditors. So that's a lot in question, don't you think? The County Board of Supervisors, which consists of 4 Republicans and 1 Democrat, previously authorized 2 audits by independent contractors who are certified by the National Institute for Standards and Technology and the U.S. Elections Assistance Commission. Those audits found no problems, but state Senate Republicans subpoenaed the county for access to the election materials at the urging of Trump supporters who refused to accept President Joe Biden's narrow victory in Maricopa County and statewide. Last week, the county launched a website, justthefacts.vote. I don't think I've ever seen the .vote designation, to address questions and misconceptions about the 2020 election. Fan has said the aim of the audit she authorized is to restore faith in the election system and find ways to improve Arizona's voting laws, not to reverse the result of the election. However, many Trump supporters still see it as a step toward invalidating Biden's victory and returning Trump to office. Well, duh. We knew that that's what they were after. But by the way, I mean, that's some kind of thing, right? It's interesting. I guess they're just not going to be based in reality or in facts here. But if you were really after helping get people behind the integrity of the election, I think maybe the idea that doing a third outside audit, they contracted with 2 different groups and 2 different audits said the election was fine. They hired a third group and now they're counting again on the third group. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning. I have good news to report. Many more listeners like you are making critical contributions that keep our show on the air. Makes good sense, of course, and patreon.com, patreon.com, makes it simple. Now you can make easy, secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. Maybe you'd like to thank us for helping keep you sane during the Trump era. Maybe you're looking forward to in-depth explanations of what's going on in the Biden administration. Whatever it is that keeps you listening, we need your help to keep bringing it to you. And hey, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running with those options too. Thanks again, everyone, for all of your support. We literally could not do this without you. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's take another look around here. We've got more on the audit front to share. Oh, but by the way, I do need to say that, a couple of comments that came in. But first of all, I had forgotten the opportunity to share Bill's morning tweet. And there's some crafting that's gone into this one. So we want to share the Kagro in the Morning radio show is live now. That's, of course, half an hour ago. But we're still live now, so it's still valid. Get this one, ready? Why does Kagro X, me, David Waldman, rate the next 2 hours, and now we're down to an hour and a half, 22 quadruple E. Why? Well, what would be rated that way? Well, because, silly, it's a really big shoe. Yes. Oh, boy. Okay. Well, you have to be of a certain age to be able to get the joke in the first place. And, yeah, that would be a rather large shoe. By the way, he also comments here that Wikipedia, which is our exclusive source here for information, I mean, I rely on it. You know, I know they can manipulate it, but it's so fun to have things manipulated in mid-story. But Wikipedia, he says the record attendance is 739,000 people at Sturgis. So that would be a damn sight larger even than the 500,000. So we're approaching 750,000. Now, if they were going to get the largest gathering ever, they're going to break the record because of the 75th anniversary. And, of course, now this year there will be, I guess, normal-ish people, but yet who would spend their week at a biker rally, who might in fact be, vaccinated and everything, saying, I want to go because, gosh, we were cooped up for the last year, and what a great chance, I mean, talk about the opposite of cooped up. Well, sort of. I mean, the opposite of cooped up is getting yourself cooped up instead of being cooped up in your crowded house, you're cooped up in a crowded bar in South Dakota. Totally different. But in between, the open road, man, and the wind in your hair, and et cetera, except if you're wearing a helmet because you're trying to be safe, because you're one of the vaccinated people. Right. All that sort of thing. But it's getting out, going to an event that you enjoy, et cetera, seeing other people, which you might still think is an okay idea if you're vaccinated, which unfortunately with the Delta variant and other variants out there, it really no longer is. But I'm pretty sure they're not going to be masked for much of the time. A lot of them also, one of the other big things is this is a big act of defiance for people who are into outward acts of defiance. And maybe they're not vaccinated and won't wear masks and are just going to show that they can, or maybe they even went last year and everybody said we would all be sick and die and we wouldn't be able to come back because we would have died in between then and now. But we didn't, and here we are. Maybe they got sick and got over it. Maybe they didn't get sick, and now they're here to roll the dice again. So every chance that they could get upwards of 750,000 there, both for the big anniversary, if anybody cares about that, the defiance disorder that many of them probably exhibit, and then there are those who just are thinking they're going to have a good time with it, and maybe even are vaccinated, but as we've learned, that doesn't stop you from contracting the virus or possibly even transmitting the virus to others who are not vaccinated. It should be a pretty scary aftermath, quite honestly. Justice commenting on it as well, just saying that it's time for the Sturgis COVID Vector Rally, good name for it, discounts for those who can prove they have not been vaccinated. There are actually things out there that say that. Some people have been circulating signs on restaurants, and I understand, I didn't put this aside somewhere, but I saw a report that some Airbnb operators, more conspiracy-minded, and disinformation-minded folks, who have actually advertised that they will not allow vaccinated people to rent from them. I think we all anticipated seeing people saying you can only rent from us if you're vaccinated, but I don't know. Maybe we weren't anticipating people saying you can't rent from us if you are vaccinated, and the excuse being, that they are incorrectly convinced that not only is the vaccine dangerous in itself because reasons, but that you can, like as infected people shed virus and thereby infect others, that they believe that you can shed whatever it is that they think is dangerous about the vaccine, and that unvaccinated people will become vaccinated somehow, or get the same infection that they erroneously believe that vaccinated people are being given on purpose, that can be shed and picked up by others, so they don't want vaccinated people in the houses they're renting, which I will help them with. I will definitely not, show up in that house. I'll help you. We'll stay out of your way. Anyway, on the audit front, I mentioned a couple of days ago that the Pennsylvania Republicans were thinking of doing the same stupid thing. We learned, I don't know, it's quite some time now since we learned that Pennsylvania Republicans had visited Arizona to observe what was going on. So now I guess Pennsylvania elected Republicans have better access to the audit site than the Arizona Senate liaison now has. Maybe they'll discuss it, but they'll probably be on the side of the cyber ninjas and not the auditors. Anyway, Pennsylvania has this to report from the AP. Mark Levy reported this. This was a couple of days ago now. We're coming up on 10 days ago, the 18th of July. Pennsylvania election audit gets GOP campaign trail embrace. Let's find out what that's about. And probably should check in on the news wires to see if there's more information since then. But former President Donald Trump's false claims of a stolen election have been debunked by the courts, his own Justice Department, and scores of recounts, even some of those just happening over and over again in the same state, right? But in the battleground state of Pennsylvania, where Trump lost by 80,000 votes 8 months ago, they're finding new signs of life. A Republican state lawmaker, bolstered by campaign trail support from top Republican candidates for governor and U.S. Senate, has launched a push for a, quote, forensic investigation of the presidential election results. A review modeled on the widely discredited process underway in Arizona. Yes, that's right. Okay. The effort is likely to face legal challenges and is still limited to 3 counties, where it is getting pushback even from Republican commissioners. But its march forward is forcing many to stop viewing it as one lawmaker's pet project and take it seriously. By which they mean not that it would be conducted seriously, but they have to take seriously the threat that an unseriously conducted audit is going to happen. The audit has fast become a litmus test in an election cycle where an open governor's office and an open U.S. Senate seat, the political equivalent of a blue moon, have triggered fiercely competitive Republican primaries. That has some GOP party officials and donors squirming with discomfort, albeit quietly. And that's not the answer to your problems. Some Republicans privately worry that the spectacle of a protracted election audit is a time bomb that will not only damage the state's democratic institutions, but also the party's credibility with critical swing voters. It will. Everything Trump touches dies. We know that. And, what can I tell you? Boo-hoo. You selected a crazy idiot as your standard bearer, and you continue to keep him as your standard bearer after he was resoundingly crushed. So I don't think you were going to do yourselves any favors by hitching your wagon to a loser. But you've done it, and now it's going to cost you. Sorry. I say that because I guess since we're on the Pennsylvania front, over the weekend I noticed that Pat Toomey was all over, I don't know, whatever Jake Tapper's show is. It was being quoted everywhere. I should scroll back and find that. But that was a good point to make over the weekend. He was on and talking about, the failure of the bipartisan commission legislation in the Senate and how he had supported that, but he opposed the formation of the select committee in the House in the absence of the possibility of a bipartisan outside commission, since the Republicans had blocked that, right? He was critical of this and saying that the whole thing was really unfair because it was actually designed to benefit Democrats politically. Where is it? Let's see. Aaron Rupar had captured some of these things. One such comment was Jake Tapper saying to Pat Toomey, "What does it say about your party that an investigation into a violent insurrection would reflect poorly upon it?" Right? Actually, there's at least 2 segments of the show that were widely circulated. That's actually was a good follow-up to the first one that circulated, where Pat Toomey was saying that investigating January 6th is politically to the advantage of Democrats to try to keep this issue in the forefront. And he argues it is a constant reminder about a terrible episode in our history rather than looking at the policies of the current president. That was his essential way of deflecting on the story. But Tapper follows up, I think, appropriately in saying, what does it say about your party that an investigation into a violent insurrection would reflect poorly upon it? Toomey answers, I would argue the current president's policies and the damage he's going to be doing, that's what we should be debating in 2022. I mean, that's just pure deflection, trying to say, look forward, not back, essentially. But a couple of good points made on that one, in this case by Tim O'Brien, a Bloomberg writer, I think, here saying, by the way, that this is the same Pat Toomey, complaining about, we're only having this investigation because it's to the advantage of Democrats electorally. This is the same Pat Toomey who pushed hard in 2012 and 2013 for the sham Benghazi investigation. It says investigation, but we can say investigations, saying at the time, I have long supported a congressional investigation and want to get answers to important questions. He said back then. What important questions were there with regard to Benghazi? None. Of course, I think we all understand that, but he was just playing a little gimme-tarianism play there. As for the original comment, his original attempt to deflect, which Jake Tapper, I guess, in the end wasn't going to have any of, I had my own reaction to it, though, where they're saying, well, investigating January 6th is really just a political ploy, a constant reminder of this terrible episode. Rather than looking at the policies of the current president, I put it just simply saying, hey, if you can't do the time, don't do the crime. He's upset, in other words, that Republicans, even anti-Trump Republicans, right, are being tarred with the same brush. It's not fair to do that to this whole party just because of a few bad apples, is essentially what he's trying to say. And look away. And anyway, we should be focusing on Biden and how we can attack him instead. Well, too bad. Like I said, if you can't do the time, don't do the crime. You were more than happy to ride the tiger for tax cuts, and now he's eating you. Boo effing who. And yes, an actual investigation into an insurgency might sink your entire party, possibly forever. And that would happen in a fair world. It's not even the world we're living in. But in a fair world, you would be sunk forever, and you would be tarred with the same brush. Yes, that would be fair, because you asked for it. You gave control of your party to Donald Trump, and everybody knew what he was. Not everybody necessarily, but everybody who had ever seen him before, anyhow, or was from the New York area. The question of, gee whiz, how's he going to do as president? The fact that he'll destroy anything he gets his hands on, if he can convert it to his own gain. And even if he can't, he'll try to convert it to his own gain and fail and destroy it in the process. That was a known fact for 30 years before he ran for president and before he came down the golden escalator. Everybody knew that this was the case. And you said, I might be able to get some tax cuts out of it. And now you're like, gosh, it's unfair that you're tarring even Republican mainstream, so-called mainstream Republicans who are resisting all of his big lie nonsense. Well, you weren't resisting when it was giving you what you wanted. And if you're going to walk away with that advantage in your pocket, then yeah, you're going to get tarred with the same brush. And there's nothing unfair about it. And I'm happy to do it, and I'll continue doing it forever. So get used to it, I guess. Let's see. Jumping back to the Pennsylvania audit story, just so we have some of the names involved and you remember them for posterity or for prosecution later. Where were we here? Yes, right. Most Republicans, I know, they were worried about poisoning the party's chances in the next election by backing this thing. Most of the Republicans I know, at the very least, have misgivings and at worst are like me and realize this is just really a blunder of epic proportions, said former Congressman Charlie Dent, a centrist Republican from the Allentown area. Why bring the Arizona clown show to Pennsylvania? And the answer is, there's grift to be had. And some people who are obscure figures but would like to become governor or senator think they can ride it all the way there. Those worries have been easily drowned out by supporters of the effort. One, State Senator Doug Mastriano, we keep hearing his name, who has claimed that Trump asked me, that's a quote, asked me to run for governor, sure, is the ringleader of the audit campaign and is fundraising off of it. All I'm asking for is a transparent and thorough investigation to prove to U.S. voters that our votes were fairly counted and that we have nothing to worry about, Mastriano wrote in an email appeal last weekend. A rival, former Congressman Lou Barletta, who is running for governor, has said that he was for an audit way back in December. He was an OG auditor. Earlier this month, Mastriano sent letters to 3 counties, including Philadelphia, a Democratic bastion and the state's largest city, to request access to a sweeping list of information, documents, and equipment with the threat of subpoenas for holdouts. Governor Tom Wolf and State Attorney General Josh Shapiro, both Democrats, have vowed to fight the subpoenas in court, giving Republicans who are leery of Trump's antics hope that the audit will have a short life. Subpoenas are a tool lawmakers have rarely used in the past, leaving it unclear whether a court would block such an effort, order counties to comply, or just choose not to intervene, said Bruce Ledowitz, a Duquesne University law professor who teaches constitutional law. No court is going to get in the way, probably, he predicted. But that doesn't mean you get some kind of enforceable enforcement order. Enforceable enforcement. That's the best kind. Meanwhile, Mastriano has left key questions unanswered, including who will do the work, how it will be funded, and where such a vast amount of documents and equipment would be stored securely. It's a lot of questions. That has not stopped candidates for U.S. Senate or governor from backing it. Sean Parnell, a candidate for U.S. Senate, said that half the state not trusting the election result is a problem that can be remedied with an audit, and dismissed the official state and county audits as simply recounts that were inadequate to investigate allegations that something went wrong. And now, after the fact, that people are saying, hey, wait a minute, maybe there were some problems, they just blow us all off and say, no, screw you. I do say that. You don't know what you're talking about. Well, he's got me. He's got my number, I admit that. You're just a bunch of crazy conspiracy theorists. Wow, it's like he knows me. Parnell told a radio show host on Wednesday. In Arizona, the Senate's Republican leadership initiated the unprecedented partisan audit of votes, and that's the right way to describe it, a partisan audit. That's bad news, right? For all the things that we're trying to keep things bipartisan, and we actually do have Republicans on the January 6th committee, and yet still, you're being partisan. You're very open about the partisan nature of the audit going on, right? Well, anyway, in Arizona, the Senate Republican leadership initiated the unprecedented partisan audit of votes in Maricopa County, home to Phoenix, despite the fact that the votes already had been counted, recounted, and certified. The effort has been supported by many Republican state lawmakers, State Party Chair Kelly Ward, and State Attorney General Mark Brnovich, the Republican who is running for U.S. Senate, by the way. However, it has drawn withering criticism from some other establishment Republicans, including those who control the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors, Cindy McCain, the wife of the late senator and GOP presidential nominee, and former U.S. Senator Jeff Flake. Republican Governor Doug Ducey has avoided the topic altogether. In Pennsylvania, what a chicken, by the way. In Pennsylvania, Republican Party and Senate Republican leaders have responded with silence. Many Republicans who want to distance the party from an audit question the cost for counties to comply with Mastriano's demands, or argue that it's time to focus on future elections. Some say it is highly unlikely it would uncover smoking gun evidence of widespread fraud, or they point to a slew of GOP-led legislative hearings that they say already covered the topic thoroughly and produced legislation, which, by the way, is glossing over the fact that they have had the investigations, found nothing, and decided to pass legislation that would restrict access to the vote anyway, despite there being no fraud. So now in the background is going off my wife's phone alarm, and she's elsewhere in the house. So let's all sit through that for the next 5 to 10 minutes and enjoy that. And so now we hear now the footsteps and the apologies. Yes, all right. Come and audit this alarm here. We need to have the state Senate wants you to shut that off. All right. Thank you. Well, that's good. I should just play music in the back. Oh, no, that would actually get us booted off of YouTube probably. So, all right. Well, anyway. My mind's a blank. So that's the end of the show. Goodbye, everybody. Right. All right. Republicans who want to distance the party, they're worried about this whole thing. They're distancing themselves to say, we're not crazy, but they are still moving forward with and voting for and supporting the otherwise insupportable voter restrictions for the next election. So even the people who are pretending they want nothing to do with the audits are perpetrating a similarly damaging fraud on the public. So you shouldn't let them get away with that. But For the most part, people will, because there's just too much to focus on. At the end of the day, I don't know what you're going to achieve, said Sam DeMarco, the GOP chair of Allegheny County, home to Pittsburgh. Still, even Republicans who avoid repeating Trump's election fraud claims have perpetuated the idea that Democrats cheated. They routinely distort the actions. This is good reporting from the AP. It's a little late in the story, but it's good that it's there. They routinely distort the actions of state judges and officials as, quote, unconstitutional or, quote, illegal in settling legal disputes and questions over Pennsylvania's fledgling mail-in voting law in the weeks before November's election. Weeks ago, Republican leaders of the state House of Representatives rejected doing any such 2020 election audit through their chamber. Instead, those Republican lawmakers advanced a Voting Rights Protection Act, and that's in quotes because it's not really a protection act at all, that they said would make elections more secure and accessible and fix 2020's alleged problems, except they don't acknowledge those problems. They rejected the opportunity to examine for those problems because they don't want to be tarred with the conspiracy theory brush. They just want to get to blocking black and brown people from voting. In addition, it would have shifted authority over election policy away from the executive branch and assigned broad new election auditing authority in future elections to the state auditor general, currently a Republican. So, gimme-tarian in nature there. Oh, he's a Republican? Then we'll shift it over there. Oh, a Democrat got elected into that office? We'll pass a new law shifting authority elsewhere instead. This happens all the time. We've been seeing them do it. Placing authority for important functions in the hands of the governor when the governor is a Republican, and then when a Democrat wins the governor's mansion, convening in the legislature to repeal or strip away those powers and move them into the hands of an officer who is currently a Republican instead. Democrats dismissed the bill as voter suppression, the supposed Voting Rights Protection Act, and Wolf vetoed it, but it gave Republicans and Republican Party figures something to point to, at the very least, as an alternative to an Arizona-style audit of the 2020 election. I think that's the issue, said Jeffrey Piccola, the GOP chair in Republican-controlled York County. I don't think going back to 2020 is going to solve any problems, and I'm not sure you can solve any problems. So, okay. Very interesting and worth looking into and keeping track of there in Pennsylvania. And some good points made. Again, the writer here is Mark Levy, Levy. And by the way, if you were interested in following him, he's AP writer on Twitter, because I thought he did a fairly good job at inserting some strongly worded passages about just how ridiculous the Republican Party position is, even noting that some of the Republicans who are willing to come out against the idea of the audits and distance themselves from the craziest stuff are still still sowing doubt and still encouraging doubt so that they can sell their partisan so-called voter protections, which are in fact voter suppression moves. And I thought that was well done. So you can follow him. His handle is Timely Writer on Twitter, if you feel like following along. And hey, why not? Speaking of all of this and the audits and the investigations, today being Tuesday is the first day of the first business meeting and the first hearings of the January 6th committee as currently constituted. I guess 9 of the, 17 members that they had, or I don't remember now what number they had on it, but I guess they have the two Republicans so far named, I guess, will be there. Republicans, by the way, discussing the possibility of punishing internally, although they're trying first externally, officially on the House floor, punishing Republicans who participate in the committee. That is, as they put it, who accept an appointment from Nancy Pelosi to serve on the committee. Although I wonder whether technically aren't all committee assignments essentially, well, I don't know. I mean, in practical reality, it's all done by, of course, a resolution, and that means a vote on the House floor, and the people are nominated by their party apparatus. But I wonder, maybe it used to be the case that they were, considered, at least informed, to have been appointed to the position by the Speaker by virtue of the resolution having been adopted. The Speaker acting on behalf of the House at the direction of the House. So I happened to see Matt Gaetz, I guess, yesterday saying anybody who accepts a Pelosi appointment to the committee should be punished, I guess stripped of their rank or what have you, was punished in some way by the Republican conference. And I guess if it's the case that technically everybody's appointed to their committee assignments in any committee by the Speaker, it may be more broad a punishment than he first imagined when he threw that out there. But I don't know. That might not be the way they view things anymore, since they have a direct floor vote on these things. At any rate, so yes, the committee is meeting, and I guess they're hearing testimony from Capitol police officers who are present on the day. And I guess we have a pretty good idea how those sorts of questionings will go and what sort of scene we'll be seeing from inside the committee room. By way of counter-programming, the Republicans' biggest trolls, led by Jim Jordan, but also including, I think, Marjorie Taylor Greene and others, are having a press conference opposite the hearing. The ostensible topic of their press conference being their big worries that they have about the treatment of people sitting in jail awaiting trial, or who I guess have already been sentenced for their participation in the January 6th insurgency and insurrection. They've never, as far as I know, been concerned about the conditions of imprisonment of anybody for any reason serving sentence or awaiting sentence on any crime of any kind anywhere in the United States. But now they're very concerned. But yet the shaman got his organic vegan stuff. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Networks Radio. All right, reestablished and back in the show. So yeah, they're having their press conference. I guess Jim Jordan, I happened to see the tweet go by with a video clip of him, The Hill, having provided it. Jim Jordan saying, I guess the line he opted to go with here, when you spend a year talking about defunding the police and actually defund the police, it's kind of hard to have more police here on January 6th like they should have done. Their whole tack at this point is, one, that the January 6th insurrection was actually good, is their overt outcome in all this. But their angle of attack has been that it is somehow Nancy Pelosi's fault that there weren't enough police there on January 6th, even though the insurrection was good. And why would you need more police here? Because they were all peaceful protesters who were hugging and kissing. Maybe they wanted more hugs and kisses, and it's entirely possible. Jim Jordan might very well have wanted a little bit more hugging and kissing going on in his immediate vicinity. He's got a record of that, so, it's not outside of the realm of possibility. But their idea is that Nancy Pelosi is unilaterally responsible for that because there is only one house in the Capitol. The House is the only one there is. There's no Senate, and the Senate leader was definitely not a Republican at the time, and he definitely wanted more cops. And all the cops who were there because Mitch McConnell asked them to be there, and all the other cops in the world, including all potential cops who could have signed up to be police officers but didn't because they were worried about being defunded, are Nancy Pelosi's fault. Meanwhile, of course, there were plenty of cops there, and I guess I should note for the record that it was the Republicans. The Republicans have been blocking and threatening to block legislative appropriations for the Capitol Police this whole time. They actually have voted to defund the Capitol Police, but never mind all of that. Gimitarianism says it's okay to do that. Accuse others of wanting to defund the police while you are defunding them in actuality. And of course, Jim Jordan puts it, wrongly in the statement right ahead, but he wants to lay the blame. That's all. When you spend a year talking about defunding the police, by the way, Democrats have spent the year saying, please don't talk about defunding the police. Oh my gosh, it'll ruin everything, right? And then he goes on to say, when you not only spend a year talking about defunding police, but actually defund the police, which of course has not happened. But the only votes that have been cast in favor of defunding the police are yours on the Republican side. But I'm going to stand here and say this without a jacket on, and so therefore you should just write it down, and both sides the whole thing. So, okay, that exists. We'll move on from there. Somewhere else I think I put the, I don't even know if I have the lineup of who is involving themselves in this press conference, but you get the idea of the kind of person who's showing up for these things. Let's see. It looks like Elise Stefanik is there. So they got the whole gang, even though I don't think I saw her name on the original group that was circulating this invitation for the press conference. Speaking, though, of the committee assignment question, Greg sent me something yesterday. Let me open this up here. Jake Sherman tweeting yesterday, founder of Punchbowl News, you know that Jake Sherman, his tweet saying that House Republicans will offer a privileged resolution this evening, that would have been yesterday, on the floor to demand Speaker Pelosi seat all of McCarthy's selections to the January 6th committee. So I don't think that worked. I mean, I don't know whether they actually went through with it, but let's see. We'll find out whether they went through with it, and I will first, though, guess how that went. My guess is, of course, you might be aware that Republicans represent a minority on the House floor, and so a privileged resolution, well, runs into a number of obstacles, but even assuming that the Republicans did get the chance to offer a privileged resolution, and it was recognized as a privileged resolution, my guess is that, a good guess would be, Republicans will lose this. They will offer a privileged resolution, have a vote, and lose the vote, and then, no, Speaker Pelosi, won't have to recognize all of McCarthy's selections for the January 6th committee. And I'm not certain what the wording of such a resolution would be, and I don't know whether there is a method. I mean, there's no method of doing it as described, forcing Speaker Pelosi to seat them. But they could, I suppose, offer a privileged resolution naming the members of the committee, and if it were adopted and passed by the House as a whole, then his nominations would be accepted as part of the committee. If the House endorsed his version of the composition of the committee, I guess that would do the trick. And I suppose he has some claim to bringing it as a privileged resolution in the sense that I assume he would be claiming that it was a question of the privileges of the House, that it is ordinarily the party leader's job to make the nominations as they see fit, and then for the Speaker to bring a bill to the floor, a resolution to the floor, endorsing those selections, and that the job they're performing as outlined by the Constitution is implicated. They're unable to do their jobs as described thanks to the Speaker's action, and so therefore it would represent the question of the privileges of the House. That would be the first opportunity, by the way, for the whole thing to be killed, for the person in the chair to say, recognize McCarthy, he stands, he offers this resolution, and then say the resolution brought by the gentleman does not meet the standards of a question of the privileges of the House, and therefore is not a privileged resolution, and therefore, the chair is able to defer consideration of the question until, such time as they might designate. There would be an appeal of that ruling, and possibly then a vote on the appeal, but more likely than that, because things are evenly divided, I guess there's the possibility Republicans would be banking on a few nervous Democrats saying, no, I really would like. There were Democrats who definitely commented off the record that they didn't like the idea of blocking McCarthy's selections, that you ought to give the Republicans what they want and just simply outvote them on the committee. So it's possible that there could be some embarrassed Democrats, perhaps conservative Democrats, perhaps Democrats running in swingy or Republican-leaning districts who might feel it was necessary to vote with Republicans on that and not wanting to risk that, but also not even wanting to have strong Democrats have to put themselves on record on this question. It's more than likely that Steny Hoyer, as majority leader, would have been on the floor to table anything he could. So they would probably move to appeal the ruling that it wasn't a privileged resolution, if that was the ruling, and at which point Hoyer would have moved to table the appeal, and then the majority probably would have voted in favor of tabling the appeal, and then that would be the end of it. If there was a ruling that it did, in fact, present a privileged resolution, there would still nonetheless be a motion to table the resolution rather than vote on it. They might have their hour debate on it, but at the end of the hour debate, in seeking a vote on the resolution itself, Steny Hoyer probably would have moved to table it, and a majority would have voted to table it. Better that than risking it, even though in all likelihood, in a normal situation, the majority could simply count on having enough votes to dispose of things that way. But why risk it? Just move to table it instead and make it a procedural vote. Let's go see if we can take a look and find out how things went last night, if there were any roll call votes that would give us a tip as to what happened here. So let's see. This is the last vote of yesterday was a motion to suspend the rules and pass something totally unrelated, H.R. 2365, Gold Star Mothers Family Monument Extension Act. Sounds very controversial. There are a couple of suspensions last night. There we are. Here's a vote on a bill. Look at this. Raising a question of the privileges of the House. Roll call number 219. HRES 554. I don't know whether the description is going to be available yet. Not often the case immediately afterwards. But there it is. HRES 554. Raising a question to the privileges of the House. McCarthy submitted the following resolution. Let's see it. Whereas on June 30th, 2021, the House voted to establish a select committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol. Whereas HRES 503 states that the Speaker shall appoint 13, there's the answer, members of the select committee, 5 of whom shall be appointed after consultation with the minority leader. And there was consultation, and this is after it. Whereas on June 30th, 2021, Speaker Nancy Pelosi stated that we believe that Congress must, in the spirit of bipartisanship and patriotism, establish this committee, although she said commission in this sense. Whereas, when asked during a press conference on July 22nd about the partisanship of the committee, and you know what? It looks like he's mixing the quotes here for effect. He's taking her comments about the necessity for bipartisanship on the commission and then attributing that to calls for bipartisanship on the committee, but they actually have bipartisanship on the committee, so still okay, but yeah, he's just trying to confuse the two. Let's see. Whereas when asked during a press conference, so this is just a recitation of, unfavorable quotes, in his opinion, from Nancy Pelosi. During a press conference on July 22nd asked about the partisanship of the committee, Speaker Pelosi stated that the less partisan it is, the more it will be accepted by the American people. Whereas in a statement put out by the Speaker's office, Speaker Pelosi stated that our imperative must be to find the truth. We must do so in a way that retains the trust of the American people in the proceedings so that they will have confidence in the truth that emerges. Whereas for the first known time in history of the House, the Speaker of the House rejected 2 of the minority leader's nominees to a select committee, whereas Speaker Pelosi's own press release acknowledged that it was an unprecedented decision. Oh boy. And whereas Speaker Pelosi's refusal to seat all 5 Republican members directly harms the legitimacy, credibility, and integrity of the proceedings of the Select Committee, now therefore be it resolved that the House of Representatives, 1, condemns the refusal of Speaker Nancy Pelosi to seat all 5 Republican members on the Select Committee, and 2, urges the Speaker to make the following appointments to the Select Committee: Representative Jim Banks of Indiana, Representative Jim Jordan of Ohio, Representative Rodney Davis of Illinois, Representative Kelly Armstrong of North Dakota, and Representative Troy Nils of Texas. That is some weak sauce. But I guess they knew that they were doomed from the start, so they just... if this had somehow passed, what they would have is a resolution urging the Speaker to make the following appointments, as opposed to simply saying, the committee shall be comprised as follows. Name all the Democrats that are currently on it, name all the Republicans that you want to be on it, and have a vote on that. The Speaker would have nothing to say about that. Maybe the fact that it's a select committee, that might be something. Maybe select committees are still technically appointed by the Speaker, but at the direction of the 2 parties as expressed in their resolutions that are adopted. So maybe that's it, although that would make for an interesting play too, right? Maybe that was all they could do because it's a select committee. And if you wondered what's the difference, why bother with it being a special committee or a select committee instead of a permanent committee, well, you don't need it permanently. But I know there are 2 designations you can have for temporary committees: select committees and special committees. And I wonder if the difference between them is, well, as hinted in the word select, that technically it is the Speaker who names everybody to the select committee, whereas perhaps a special committee is, in fact, populated by the adoption of a resolution. But I don't know. I'm not certain about that, but that would be something to dig into, maybe in the background. Let me get back to what happened yesterday. So they brought HRes 554. There was a question. What do you know? The vote on it was a question on the motion to table. So they went ahead and they had their debate, and I guess rather than even getting to a question of whether or not, a decision on whether or not the resolution presented a question of the privileges of the House, they just went straight to a motion to table. I wonder, do they have a link to the actual transcript of the debate? I don't think so. But by the way, the motion to table got 216 Democratic votes, 3 members not voting for whatever reason. Also got 2 Republican votes to table. 197 Republican votes against, 12 not voting, for a final tally of 218 to 197 in favor of tabling the resolution. So, very interesting. Let's see. Is there any probably not yet, any congressional record transcript available for it? So, at any rate, I think that you'll find that my guess about how that was going to go, there's really not that many options for them to sort through on that. A motion to table was more or less inevitable in that one. All right, so lots of tweeting going on about what's going on inside the Select Committee and the cops who are testifying, and apparently some never-before-seen footage of the attack is being shown there, but I don't think it shows us anything more than we've seen. It's a different angle on things, and it's always interesting to see everything that they've got, but no new news of anything else. No flamethrowers or nuclear devices in evidence. Just the same old stuff. Bear spray and clubbing of police officers, fist fights, etc. Certainly nothing that reflects well on the crowd either. All right, let's see. Other things to discuss in advance of Joan McCarter's visit. I don't know. My guess is that she too is largely focused on what's going on in front of the committee today. Although I see Mark Sumner is on that beat. We should check in and see what's up with what's been currently published from Joan. I'm sure she's still got one eye on the committee proceedings there just because it's of interest. But so far, looks like the morning's post is, or well, actually this is from yesterday, about encouraging Schumer and Pelosi to consider canceling August recess, something that she's been on for a long time. And that's becoming it looks increasingly necessary as the infrastructure deals are falling apart. Of course, we are in infrastructure week again. It's perpetual. It's becoming as much of a joke as it ever was during the Trump administration, and that's problematic. And as Republicans continue to hold out, maybe it's a good idea to force them to work through the break. I mean, there just hasn't been much legislation going on, and you're either gonna. I guess there's no justification for taking a break. Break from what? You haven't been doing any legislating. I know it's been frustrating work, and work deserves a break, but what can I do? You've held yourselves out as effective legislators, and you're going to have to do it at some point. Might as well be in August, and good idea for them to stick around. And we'll have her discussing that, I'm sure, later on. All right, so let's see. Anything else that I should do before we have her on? Let's see. A couple of other stories. Oh, yeah. You know what? We missed this one entirely. And I guess this was the Republicans trying to fling one more thing at the wall to see if it sticks. And this is a great example of the whole exercise, because for the day or two that they were screaming about this stuff, it kind of looked like it might stick, but then nothing came of it. And so you can see how sometimes things just they arrive from out of left field and then they just disappear into left field later on. Although now I have a note from Joan that she says you may want to call in a little bit early. So certainly the door is open for that. But this, what is this? This is a plumb line piece from a couple of days ago written by Paul Waldman. But just so now I'll just note for the record the fact that there was this headline, and you might even have noticed this attempt at creating a controversy by the Republicans, and it just sort of faded away and failed. The headline here: what the Freedom Phone and the right's anti-vax campaign have in common. And I guess at some point somebody was offering up this idea that, well, you remember the whole stink that Republicans have been trying to make about them being censored by big tech. And they decided to come out, somebody said, we're going to bring out our own phone that has its own, I don't know what, its own system and its own carrier, and therefore you won't be, tracked or censored by big tech, even though bringing out your own phone probably means just buying time on one of the big tech networks anyway. At any rate, that seems to have fallen by the wayside in the 10 days since the thing was written up, when it was a hot item, and then everybody forgot about it. And maybe because, as it turns out, the phones were all built in China, which, for you to be at the same time saying, we're going to have our Freedom phones built for us in China, but also the vaccine was a Chinese plot. But I'm sure these phones aren't. All Republicans buy these Chinese phones and use them for all your closely guarded secrets, like telling other Republicans about how the Chinese are attacking us with bioweapons. I'm sure that was a great idea. Maybe that's what made it fall apart. Anyway, Joan is here. Let's start in with that. Good morning, Joan. Everything okay there?
Good morning. You didn't get your Freedom phone?
I did not. I got my Obama phone, and I still have it. So, I don't know. I took care of it, and it seems to be working. Yeah, the Freedom phone appears to have fallen apart. It comes, by the way, preloaded with Parler and Newsmax apps. So I guess that's...
it's got to be one circle of hell.
Yeah, $500 for one of these things. And
500?
Yeah, which the Daily Beast in this story reports as appears to be a rebranded version of a cheap Chinese phone that you can buy online for $120. So you can have the phone.
There's 1 point every minute.
Right. So they added Parler and Newsmax to it, and then added $380 to the price. So pretty good. And I hope they go ahead and do that. And I'm not sure who builds the thing, but wait till they find out. But they're gimmitarians. They don't care. In this case, Chinese technology is good. And then when they find out that they were spied on, they'll just say Biden put it in there, the spyware. Okay.
Is Parler still a thing?
I don't know. They're on again, off again. So who knows? Most of the how can you tell? Most of the users of Parler are under arrest. So it might be that it's still there. It's just that they don't have their phones. Because it was kind of, I don't think they meant it for this to be the case, but they basically ended up rolling it out as an insurrection app. This is what you can use to, if you don't want to tweet because they're censoring you, you can put your tweets showing yourself violating all sorts of laws at the Capitol riot on Parler. And then their servers were compromised immediately. All the pictures are, and all the metadata are in the hands of the FBI, and they're just arresting people hand over fist because that's where they chose to, they published photos of their crimes. That it happened on Parler, as it turns out, didn't protect you at all. So it was not, I don't know how secure it was ever supposed to be. It was just a Twitter protest thing. They were angry at Twitter, but it was still posting pictures of yourself doing crimes. So I don't know how that was supposed to help.
They went on Bumble and Friends.
Yes.
That was my favorite, getting turned in by potential dates on Bumble.
Right. It's just on so many levels, and not the least of which is, they're really going to love this. Wait till I tell them that I was a traitor. Yeah, that's hot, Okay, whatever. This is a guy who was, I guess, presumably finding no success on farmersonly.com and decided that this other dating app would do the trick. And I also read plenty out there about apps or not. A lot of people are just basically uninterested in dating Trump supporters for some strange reason. Maybe just because they're just dishonest people and it's not a good idea. But to get involved with them. But apparently that's a big topic of discussion that they feel put upon. Big tech is censoring them, and big date, I don't know what you would call like society, really, in general, is shunning them. Yeah. But society's made up of people who go on dates.
I think I got the impression from that story that there were women who were actually like, well, this is a thing now. Let me go catch some insurrectionists to turn into the cops.
Right. While you're swiping, you might as well do some policing. Right? You swipe, this guy's interesting, this is interesting. Oh, this was a potential criminal. I'm not interested in this person, but I saw something and I thought I'd say something. That's the saying. So, okay.
That's what they tell us.
Yeah, you can do your social activity and, police the country at the same time. So they did it.
Good morning, Kagro.
Hi. Thank you for coming by. Still on fire or no?
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. I did see that
it's been rather surreal.
I can imagine.
Living in the middle of all of this. We had the heat dome that moved in June, 2 months early, and it's pretty much stuck around. Records
still here,
falling all over the place about, the highest low temperatures and the longest string of highest low temperatures and smoke, and it's kind of grim out here, and it's very strange to be living in the middle of all of this and having everyone I love living in the middle of all of this and watching the debate in DC over infrastructure where people are bitching about there's too much climate stuff in it.
Yeah.
People like Joe Manchin.
Right.
And also just to have the huge disconnect. You watch the evening news and it's fires, it's flooding in Europe, it's flooding in China, it's everything. And then switching to this squabble between Republicans and Democrats over infrastructure.
Yeah.
This is jarring.
It is, and it's really remarkable. And given that we're seeing the smoke from these fires here in the East Coast too, although I don't know, maybe in West Virginia they're just used to soot all over the place and it doesn't bother them. But yeah, it's amazing that you can see this and think that there could be too much climate-related legislation in anything. Well, we'll take a quick break and come back and complain about it.
Hi, I'm Scott Anderson, the guy that writes the daily summary for this show, Kagro in the Morning. Thank you to everyone that supports this show. Many of you send donations through PayPal, Patreon, Square Cash, Radio Public, and so on. Some of you write your own essays and send them in, or read articles with your own commentary. We appreciate it. Now, some of you are listening to this and thinking, I'd like to help, but isn't there something I could do that wouldn't require money or effort? Why, yes, there is. You can just like us. On Daily Kos, they call it the recommend button. YouTube has a thumbs up. There are hearts and likes and love buttons. Tap our love button. Tap our love button every day. Share our shows and summaries on Facebook and Twitter, YouTube and iTunes, Stitcher and Amazon. Most of these places allow you to write a review, so a sentence or two would be great. Recommend us to social media, or tell your friends to listen to the show. You aren't just helping us, you're helping them find their new favorite thing to listen to. You could change the world. So thank you in advance from me and everybody else in the world.
All right, welcome back now. I'm taking a look. Welcome back, everybody. We're back from our break. Joan's going to send me, let's see, where are you sending it on? Twitter or Skype? Okay, I'll take a look over in Skype. Okay. And a map of all the various wildfires can be had here. The incident map here. I don't want to copy the link. I want to open it. Okay. And I was just wondering, though, whether, there was any chance of wildfires either getting in the way of or blocking people's access to or from Sturgis. Still have a week or so before things get critical there. But, I would imagine that you've checked the map and you say that there's nothing in the area, nothing at all in South Dakota, I see.
No, the western Wyoming.
Good for them.
And sort of getting toward eastern Montana, but really South Dakota is empty right now.
Well,
of fire.
They're lucky in that sense. There will be a couple of people, if you're coming from the Pacific Northwest and riding to Sturgis, you might have to alter your route, though. There would be fires in your way. You could go. Good luck altering your route to avoid fire. Yeah, really. I mean, you'd have to go. It looks like you'd have to go down to Nevada and then across Utah and Colorado and then turn north across Nebraska or something. I mean, you really have to go.
You're not going to miss the smoke.
No. And
that much is, I mean, I saw one map yesterday. Really, the whole northern half of the U.S. was under smoke.
Yeah. That's that'll be tough to deal with on a bike without masking because they hate masks. That's going to be something if they wear respirators through the smoke and then get to Sturgis and take them off. I could see that happening. Well, we'll see if there's any reports of that. I mean, if you're coming from the Pacific Northwest, presumably you would want to the shortest route. Looks like coming across Montana, and I guess Interstate 90 for a while. And I don't know what kind of. I want to overlay the two maps.
Yeah, it'd be I-90.
Yeah, so.
Mostly. You couldn't go up into Canada. This map that I sent you does not show Canada fires, but they're happening there too.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. That's on a separate map somewhere. I'm sure there's a Fire Canada map out there or something, whatever they would designate it. They won't let you into Canada anyway, for the most part. So, on fire or not. Yeah. So they'd like to keep their COVID numbers down. And they're doing I understand now pulling ahead of the United States in the percentage of the population vaccinated, even though they don't actually make any vaccines in Canada. They just do a better job of administering them. But they have fewer people to give them to. And I guess people very well used to government-administered health care. So that's a good advantage when you're trying to get people vaccinated on a national program, as opposed to our program of, won't you please consider not killing yourselves and others? No. Because Biden asked
freedom.
Right. So, all right. Well,
it's a very strange time in the United States,
yes,
in the world.
We have to deal
with it. In Washington, D.C.
Yes. What's
where actually
got your eye this morning?
It's pretty much normal for the last, 2 decades in D.C.,
well,
where
we're used to it.
Republicans continue to be Republicans, and the political press continues to say both sides.
Right, yeah, including insurrection, which, may or may not be your fault. That was the press conference this morning. Apparently the Republican approach to things this morning was all about, it's the same story that they've been peddling for a week or more now, that the attack was Democrats' fault for not something-ing in a different way, that Mitch McConnell didn't do that something.
Yes.
So.
Well, because it was just the House. It's Nancy Pelosi's fault.
Right.
Because Nancy Pelosi is the boss.
Right.
It's her fault.
Yes. The famous pictures of the insurrection, including the QAnon shaman, are, of course, pictures of them in the Senate, but that's okay. But the something House, yada yada. Of course, on the House side, they shot the people who were coming in. And I guess that's a big rallying point for Republicans who now think that that Ashley Babbitt was a martyr and all this, and Paul Gosar going so far as to say, she was a harmless protester. She too just wanted to go in there and maybe hug legislators, as Trump said, and they shot her for no good reason. And I don't know why they're sticking to that position. Is that something you're actually watching this morning, the select committee, or
Twitter,
not so much?
Just on Twitter. I've been listening to you, actually.
Oh, well.
I'm not that good at multitasking.
Okay.
I've been sort of glued to Twitter, though, and one thing that just sort of popped out at me and enraged me was political playbooker Rachel Bade. Bade, who last week was talking about how Nancy Pelosi kicking Jim Jordan and Jim Banks off of the committee was the worst thing ever, whatever it was that she said.
Yeah, I noticed she was out front about that. I didn't. Yeah. Was she up about it
this morning? She tweets every time they show these sorts of videos is just as disturbing as seeing it the first time. And every time, this is the part, and every time I ask myself, how the hell did this happen?
Gee whiz.
Well, might have had something to do with normalizing Donald Trump. Might have had something to do with normalizing Jim Jordan.
Yeah. I don't know.
The lack of self-awareness here is just astonishing.
Yeah. I don't know what to say about it, but yeah, just marking the occasion, I guess. I did see that she was at the center of controversy last week, and I guess I wasn't looking for her this morning, but I guess she put herself in your line of sight with that.
The folks at Politico Playbook are good at doing that. I don't follow her, but it pops up for me anyway, and I have to see it anyway. Oh my goodness.
Happens all the time. I mean, that's where I get most of that stuff. I don't think I probably only follow about half of the people that I end up regularly reading. It's other people retweeting them into my timeline, which I'm just as happy to have happen. I don't.
Well, except for one is Glenn Greenwald.
Yes, that's
you don't
true.
need to retweet him into my timeline. I stopped following him for a reason.
Yeah, right. But people do send those regardless. So I'm up on what he's doing, even though I'm not interested. But that's an interesting way of getting your news. I'm interested in what other people are interested in, even if I end up condemning it. But of course, the other half of my feed is people saying, "Don't retweet those things."
Yes.
and yet there they are. And I do the same thing all the time, but you can't help it. All right. Well, if that's not on your screen, and I can't blame you for it, I couldn't decide whether it would be more interesting to try to watch the committee or the weird press conference that Jim Jordan and Marjorie Trader Green are trying to hold, although I haven't seen video of her yet. Maybe they're saving her for last. But it seems to be kind of weak sauce. I thought they would come up with something more outrageous at that.
Then it's Nancy Pelosi's fault?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the worst of the worst in terms of Republican trolls, and there's nothing new or outrageous yet. And as you know, Politico knows we all have this tremendous hunger for the outrageous. They must bring it to us. Unbiased and unvarnished and in stenographic detail. But so far nothing, and that's fine with me. I didn't happen to see exactly how the attempt at bringing the privileged resolution went yesterday, but I guessed that would, I don't know how you don't guess that a privileged resolution attacking the speaker brought by the minority is going to fail. But,
yeah.
But it did. And, I guess McCarthy just figures he's in a tough spot in that I don't think he minded bringing it, but I don't think it was his idea, but it was pressure from the wildest elements of his conference, and he couldn't not bring it or he'd find himself chucked out as alleged leader. So there you go. They wasted time with that. They managed it last night in between regular business and the suspensions, because that's how important and central it was to the attention of the country. So, meanwhile, Infrastructure Week, as it turns out, once again.
And we learn from CNN that it's being now negotiated almost entirely by Rob Portman.
Okay.
Which, yay, have a bipartisan committee that is, of course, controlled by Republicans, who are the minority.
Why not?
I don't know what the hell Sinema, who's supposed to be the Democratic leader, along with Portman, what she's doing.
No, I have no idea.
I don't know what any of them are doing.
I really haven't heard very much about whatever it is she's actually doing. So if she's the Democratic lead, I don't know. I guess she's just sitting and waiting for something. I see that she's fending off, negative press the best she can in Arizona, and that her approval ratings are low, and that generally speaking, people are unhappy with her. And
No Labels loves her.
Oh yeah. Oh.
I don't know if you saw this this morning and last night. The president of No Labels tweeted out, thank you so much for your bipartisan efforts, and then there's this whole long trail of people repeating that in a completely spontaneous and organic uprising of support for Kristen Sinema.
Yeah, okay.
The identical tweet. It's so she's got No Labels on her side, which that's extremely valuable, I'm sure.
Sure.
For the voters of Arizona. They'll want to know exactly what No Labels has to say.
People wake up in the morning and do say that. Right. I wonder what No Labels has to say. I wonder whatever happened to that kick the can guy.
Oh.
The can kicks back thing. Whatever it was. Yeah, I think that was one of their efforts. Well, I don't know.
I think it was. I had forgotten all about that.
Right next to Parler. And everything else in the world, for that matter. The Republicans have decided they were going to make a Republican version of something interesting that Democrats did. But
I don't know where No Labels came from, other than it's extremely well funded. But who has the kind of money? Who would want to put their money into that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure that it came to light at some point and just didn't make any particular sense, but I imagine that they were people adjacent to, the old Simpson Bowles crowd.
Yeah, they're always going to be those people, but to actually
still do
spend money.
Yeah, like when I don't know. It does seem odd, and I guess they just have money to burn, and I guess they're doing it. And plenty of places in the country where you could set your money on fire very easily. The whole land is on fire. So I don't know. I'm not certain who's behind that one. And it's amazing, though, that I guess they've been spending their time just running support for cinema, because I haven't really, literally, I just not seen anything in terms of how she's moving the negotiations forward. As you say, the only person whose name I see associated with the effort is Portman's, but I guess she must have been complaining. She must have seen, oh, my approval ratings in Arizona are bad, and won't someone help me with that? And rather than organize behind any principles of what sort of infrastructure package to pass, No Labels has instead spent their money on a political rescue for Kirsten Sinema. Which,
apparently,
I mean, I guess if you're accountable to no one in particular but your donors, and I don't know, I guess they consider that buying control of a Senate seat. That's maybe more interesting of an investment than saying, here's what we should be doing as infrastructure policy in this country. And I guess that's taken care of by Rob Portman. So
that's being taken care of by. It's astonishing to me, and so depressingly predictable.
Yeah, that is awfully sad. I wonder what we would find.
Back last week when we were supposed to have the cloture vote on Wednesday, everybody, namely Susan Collins, pipes up. Oh no, we're going to be ready Monday. This is too soon. Come back to us on Monday. We can have the vote on Monday because we'll have the thing on Monday. Monday comes along. Do they have it? No. What are they fighting over? Everything in the bill. Oh, well, transit's a problem. Oh, water's a problem. Oh, broadband's a problem. What's not a problem?
Yeah. That's, I mean, I guess I expected much the same and just continued delays. But, yeah, you wonder. I don't know. I guess nothing ever happens to their credibility when they promise something on a certain date and just keep going. And I don't know. It's more reporting
and that's kind of a problem. It's a problem in the White House. It's a problem in the political press. It's a problem in the country, which could kind of use this money. Then there's the fact that we're in the middle of the next surge of coronavirus, with the Delta variant being really, pretty darned bad. And they're still talking about using leftover COVID money. Leftover.
Because we're done.
Because we're done. Because there isn't any more COVID, so let's just take that money and put it into infrastructure. Excuse me?
Yeah, I don't know.
We're maybe going to need that money. It's the disconnect between reality and what's going on in Washington, D.C. has probably never been more stark. And having this hearing now with the select committee in the background, it's highlighting that. In my mind, I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but it just feels like we're in an incredibly, extraordinarily dangerous time. And that everything in DC is appearing to go on as normal. It's a little bit problematic.
That is odd.
I'm getting kind of worked up these days.
I guess so. By the way, I did take a check Wikipedia to find out just something to remind ourselves of, like, No Labels and why the hell we're still dealing with them. That part isn't answered, but I guess the founders of, and I guess still the leaders of the group are Tom Davis, the former Republican congressman from Virginia, and no reason why anybody would still be really involved with him. I think it's 15 years since he's been in office, maybe even. And Nancy Jacobson is the other founder, about whom I know next to nothing. But she, there's descriptive information here. Early career working for, Al Gore's presidential campaign in '88. Later the Clinton campaign. Also worked at the DLC. and for Evan Bayh. So give you an idea of where she's coming from. But I think the important information, and I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. I don't like doing this particularly to women who are active in whatever field, but it looks to me like the better explanation here is in the little personal details box. Spouse Mark Penn. That might be your answer. She's, a fairly accomplished person. Not huge accomplishments, not a big name, but in politics. But that might have more to do with it than the fact that she was national finance director for Evan Bayh, for instance.
For instance.
Because it goes right there from the early career box to no labels. So the early career ends with her being finance director for Evan Bayh in 2000 up to 2010, and then boom, no labels after that.
Nancy, she has 28 followers on Twitter. No, she has 193 followers on Twitter. Not that means anything.
Yeah. She does her organizing elsewhere. But
this is who Cinema is looking to for her support. I don't know.
Yeah, national leaders are listed as Joe Lieberman, who we remember, but I guess he's still there, and Larry Hogan. So what a duo. Those are the electeds behind no labels. And when did Tom Davis leave Congress? 2008.
I was going to say it's been at least a decade.
So, yep, more than that. But there you go. It's a little weird. Okay, I just thought I'd throw that in there.
Not really a powerhouse in politics, I would say. So,
no.
What Cinema is doing remains a mystery.
I guess so.
Unless she thinks that she's actually charmed so many Republicans that when they're back in the majority, they'll bring her along.
Maybe.
Republicans will reelect her in 2024.
I have no reason to believe that that's the case. Neither does she, but I don't know what else to bank on. I don't know.
I can't think what else is motivating her.
I don't know. It's not her work. That's for sure. I don't know. Yeah. Again, it's just nothing. And am I looking in the wrong places? Should I be reading different sources? Her name just doesn't come up, like for weeks at a time, unless it's her complaining about her political standing, or worrying about it. I don't know what news there is about. I'll check while we're talking.
Well, and it's odd because she is supposed to be co-leading this bipartisan group, and you never see comment from her about it. You never see her taking the lead in negotiations. She shows up at the press conferences right in front, but you don't see advocation from her for any particular stance. No. You don't see her talking about wildfires.
No.
It's very strange. And Arizona is one of those states that does happen to be kind of burning up right now.
Yeah, I'll take a look.
It's bizarre. It's bizarre.
I see. Yeah. Quite a lot, really.
There's quite a bit of fire in Arizona, yeah.
Yeah, and in Maricopa County, just a little bit too. Like, don't burn down all your ballots at the fairgrounds, everybody. Not that they're worth any. Don't. Maybe go ahead. I mean, that's
the other part of it on the For the People Act. Arizona was the state that went to the Supreme Court to advocate for its voter suppression laws, and it won. Yeah. And she has to be reelected as a Democrat in Arizona.
Yeah, and has she even commented on it? I don't know. All I see in the news I just searched. The top news is that Jesse Jackson was among 39 arrested at a sit-in at her office.
Yes.
So there's that. And then the next item is from Charlie Kirk saying that Kyrsten Sinema is more of a Republican than John McCain. That'll help her.
That helps.
And let's see. And Kyrsten Sinema ripped by key supporter ahead of Trump visit as Arizona Attorney General Grant Woods, a key GOP endorser of Kyrsten Sinema in 2018, asks, "Why are you even in the Senate?" I don't know, but I don't know how we get there. There's literally no mention whatsoever of her involvement in the infrastructure negotiations in the last week's worth of Google News headlines.
And in fact, the standout thing I can think of in the reporting about her in these negotiations is that she's the one who brings the wine.
I believe that. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's a strategy too, I guess you could say. If I thought that the strategy was to get Republicans drunk so that they got an agreement, I'd approve. But I have a feeling that the only strategy is to get herself buzzed, and so she doesn't remember what's going on or doesn't care as much about, dropping the ball on everything. I don't know. That is bizarre. There's literally zero going on about her legislative accomplishments. So I guess it's a good question. Why is she even in the Senate? Nobody knows.
It's very strange. Not that I've ever understood the Senate, but
yeah.
Boy.
Well.
Kagro, what a week it's going to be.
Well, what else is coming up?
It'll be infrastructure week. We're not sure. It's up to maybe
Kirsten.
It'll be do something with the debt ceiling week. Kind of doubt it.
Yeah, no real progress there.
What prompted me to write yesterday. Janet Yellen says, okay, sort of October 1st is pretty much our final date. After October 1st, I don't know, because of bills coming due, how much beyond that we can go. So you kind of have October 1st to get this done. And of course, Mitch McConnell, nope, not going to do that. Lindsey Graham insisting we have to have a cat food commission before we're going to hike up the debt ceiling again.
You don't have time for that.
They don't have time for that.
All right. Well, I'm sure they'll, find some way to make that part of the, we'll be talking grand bargain again,
We'll be talking grand bargain. I don't know. They're not talking about putting it in the budget reconciliation bill for infrastructure. We're not sure when the infrastructure budget reconciliation bill's even going to happen. And of course, October 1, we also have to have government funded.
Yes. So that's an awful lot riding on October 1st.
Once again, here is the entirely predictable schedule.
October comes the same time each year.
And the entirely predictable fights that we're going to have as Republicans insist, no, we can't do that. No, we're not going to do that. Maybe we're going to have a government shutdown.
Okay.
Here we go again.
I don't
understand. It does seem like leaving for most of August and September is kind of not a good idea.
Yeah, that's something you've been on for quite a while. I don't understand how they think they will avoid shutdown or debt ceiling. And I don't even know why you're not even threatening to put it in reconciliation. At least a hike, if not an elimination. Like, why not buy yourself more time?
Is it again, do we have Manchin and Sinema saying, oh no, maybe that's it. I don't know.
I don't know.
We never see them say anything other than aphorisms about bipartisanship. So
Manchin gets himself in the paper, at least. I mean, I don't know. Sinema can't even do that. I mean, maybe it's best. We should be counting our blessings that she's not that busy getting herself in the paper. But yeah, but on the things that she's supposed to be in the paper about, I wouldn't mind if there was like a Democratic presence at these negotiations. That'd be good. Or better than not having one, because I guess we lose the negotiations.
It seems to be entirely driven by the Republicans, and that's a problem.
Yes, I would say so. Do you think it will solve itself
kind of
by
a problem
next
that
Tuesday?
They just, I put this back on Biden. I'm sorry, he lost the momentum, and he had really good momentum from the COVID negotiations.
I mean, they were going to run into trouble for sure, but yeah, this has really been dragging on, and I don't know. Well, I guess we give them a reprieve. I am on vacation for the first time in a billion years. It feels like it's next 2 Tuesdays. So
good for you.
Why, thank you. We'll be communicating, I'm sure, via Twitter instead. But I guess that gives us 2 to 3 weeks for 2 or 3 more infrastructure weeks.
Can't believe you're going on August recess in the middle of all of this, Kagro.
I know,
I just can't.
It's unbelievable. I finished my work. I don't remember what it was, but I did finish it, I'm sure. And no one else remembers either, and that's the good news. But okay, well, I'll be chatting with you, I'm sure. During that time, it'll be real interesting to see where we come back in 3 weeks. But I'm guessing it might be the same exact place. Except,
I have a feeling it might just be.
Yeah, I guess so.
All right. Have a great vacation.
Thank you very much.
And we'll talk to you in 3 weeks.
Yes. Hope all goes well and maybe some of those fires go out. Thanks for joining us today. And man, it's frustrating. Okay. Talk to you again soon. And the rest of you will talk in between, and we'll all be chatting on Twitter. But first, Justice Putnam will be chatting at you with this.
NetworksRadio.com. You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
I mean, this. What's he got on tap here for today? According to Washington Post reporters Leonig and Rucker, they're back in the news. Trump gleefully watched his supporters attack the Capitol on January 6th, while Mike Pence didn't trust some of his Secret Service detail. I feel like those details. Let's see what's new with Justice